Hi everyone, Norman here. Today I want to show you a super smart way to bind off stockinette stitch that doesn't curl. So as you can see, this project here lays perfectly flat, and if these curling in edges have been annoying you for ages, then this technique will be perfect for you. It works the same no matter if you're working flat or in the round. Let's dive right into it. So this bind off has a very simple principle. So we are going to go 3 rows below, 1, 2, 3 here into this row, and we are going to knit this row here together with the current row. So we are creating a sort of little pocket here, and this will prevent things from curling. In order to do that, we are going to enter the stitch 2 rows below, so 1, 2, this stitch here. And then we are going to grab the strand here connecting these stitches, bring it back here to the knitting needle. So we have an extra stitch here, and we are going to knit that together here with the currently active stitch. So it's a little bit easier to see here for the second stitch. And if you're knitting in the round, you don't need to bother with that edge stitch anyway. So again, we're going in here 2 rows below. So this is 1 row below, 2 rows below. And then here in between, see there is this little strand. We're going to grab that strand and lift that back to the knitting needle. And now we can simply knit it together here, like so. One more time. So go in 2 rows below, grab the strand in between, and then weasel your knitting needle through those 2 stitches and knit them together. One more time. 2 rows below, grab the strand, lift it back, and knit things together. So it looks a little bit, well, peculiar at first, but once you understand the overall principle, it's actually fairly simple. So, and you work across your full row or round like so, and repeat these steps here for each and every stitch. Knit it together with the row 3 rows below. So once you worked across the full row or round, this should be the result. So you create a little welt or little ridge here, and this is what's going to prevent your fabric from curling. And then you can simply turn around and bind off the regular way here on the purl side, like so. If you are working in the round, you can of course bind off on the right side. You can use any bind off of your choice. So this is just a standard bind off, but you could of course use a stretchier bind off of your choice. So that part is actually not the important bit. Now you can only decide how the very edge, oops, I think I didn't pass that over correctly. Now you can decide how the very edge will look, but that won't really influence the way the fabric will behave, well, not regardless, but if you use a standard bind off here right away, the edge will not curl anyway. And then this here will be the result. As you can see, it lays perfectly flat and doesn't curl anymore. And as I just said, you could combine this technique with any other bind off technique of your choice. The trick is knitting these rows together. The actual bind off doesn't really matter. And in case you are wondering how to achieve a similar thing here for your cast on, Well, then I have an option for you here on YouTube as well. I link it to you up in here, but if you want perfectly matching edges, of course, you would have to start with a provisional cast on and then pick up stitches from that cast on and use the same technique on both sides. Now here's a little trick. So when you dive in and grab the yarn and bring it back, now slip it back to the needle like so. So not like that, but like so. So it looks a little bit like this stitch here was twisted, or rather twisted in the wrong way, and then knitted together. Let's do that one more time. So again, you dive in, very same stitch, but then you slip the stitch back like so. This will be, well, a little bit more difficult to knit. However, the resulting welt will be less pronounced. Let's compare that. So here you end up with a rather clear demarcation line. However, if you bring the yarn back to the needle like so, this ridge here will be less pronounced. However, I don't want to disillusion you. This will be, because this stitch here, this stitch here. So if I bring that back up. Now, as you can see, this stitch is sitting on the knitting needle with the leading leg in the back. This means it is quite a lot more difficult to knit. However, if you think that little ridge doesn't look all that nice, then consider doing it like so, because then the transition will be a lot smoother. So just to illustrate, this was the first technique I showed you where this edge is a lot crisper and more pronounced, and here this would be the second edge that is definitely more rolling over and smoother, but as I said, also a little bit more difficult to knit. So decide for yourself how you want to lift that strand back to the knitting needle, the easy way or the slightly more difficult but a little bit more smoother way. Anyway, that's how to prevent your stockinette stitch edges from curling. Comment below if you have any questions, and as always, happy knitting and enjoy the rest of your day.